Is everything okay in there?
So disgusting.
No, this is perfectly natural. The food goes in and then it has to come out.
Of my butt.
Yeah. Do you want me to come in and help you?
No, I got it.
Don't forget to wipe.
Yeah.
Welcome back, guys. So this is gonna sound kind of random, but on the series, Farouk is of Moroccan origin, yet what he keeps speaking there is a mix of French, which is a solid part, by the way, of Moroccan culture, and what I believe is Farsi, which has nothing to do with Morocco. Now, according to what Max brought to my attention on Discord, he does speak some German in the middle as well. I did not notice that, but nonetheless, he does every once in a while say something in German, which could kind of mean that he's basically talking in all those languages of all those people that he kind of possessed over the years. I did find it funny, though, that he did not for once speak any of the two languages or the other two languages that are most common in Morocco, which are basically Darija, or Moroccan Arabic, and Berber, or Amazigh. But yeah, this is yet another good episode, less complicated than the premiere of the season, less complicated than season 1 overall, which is even more complicated than the premiere of the season, but it was really good and I did really like it. But in the spirit of not wasting any time and in the spirit of getting right down to business, let's go. Number 1. Those Jon Hamm subliminal messages are back, and right away this time, and there's only one of them at the very beginning of the episode, even though extremely prolonged, but I do like those. Now, as I mentioned on last week's video or last week's review, I still believe we need to focus on all of these, kind of keep them all in mind from the premiere into the very end of the season. I think that somehow at the very end of the season, they're all gonna kind of connect on some level. So you've just got to keep remembering them, and you've just got to keep putting them in your mind with each and every episode and kind of trying to connect them each and every time. Now, this week's subliminal message by Jon Hamm was about the conversion disorder, but it did start with the placebo effect versus the nocebo effect. And as explained by the guy, both effects are basically more psychological than physiological. So the placebo effect is when you come to believe that you were actually feeling better because of a medication that you were offered, even though you were never really offered the real medication. All you were offered is what we have come to know over the years as the placebo pill or injection or whatever. So no real medical treatment happening over here. The nocebo effect, on the other hand, is all about having the opposite reaction, as in getting to feel the side effects of a treatment while you're under nothing, or possibly under nothing, but the effect of a placebo pill. But anyway, all these references kind of come full circle when Jon Hamm starts explaining how our minds have the capability of creating their very own physical realities. You take the pill, and your imagination starts running wild. But after giving all of these examples, Jon Hamm jumps to talking about conversion disorder, where your body converts some of your mental stress to a set of physical symptoms. Now, Jon Hamm moves on to speak about how, in certain circumstances, an involuntary physical symptom developed by one person can become viral and spread from one person to another and to another until the entire community is either affected or infected. Now, there is one final part to his message that I'm going to discuss later, but so far everything that I've mentioned here is sort of a double-edged sword. So number 2, we've got the monks and how they got infected by the chattering teeth disease. But before we talk about that, let's talk about that very first scene. So that very first scene with Farouk and the reflection we see in his sunglasses, and given how he seems to die right then and there, that is most definitely the astral plane fight that he had with David's father, Professor X. Obviously, as well, the very same fight that ended in the death of Amahl Farouk. But moving on to number 3, as the Mon goes loose within Division 3, he takes David hostage, or he kind of abducts him momentarily. He kind of plants thoughts in his head, or plants memories in his head, and David starts seeing everything that happened to all of those monks in that monastery. So we did know from the very first scenes on this episode that the monks took the body of the Shadow King and buried it in the monastery. And according to the conversation that the monk had with Melanie and Ptolemy when he connected himself to the Admiral and spoke through those vermilion, the monks never really knew that the man they were given to bury in their monastery was actually a monster. So pretty much after Farouk was buried there, his presence started driving them insane. We saw that man laughing or that monk laughing like crazy, no control over his laughter. And you need to remember here the example that Jon Hamm used at the beginning of the episode, the uncontrollable laughter epidemic. So for a moment there, you start thinking, okay, the Chattering Teeth epidemic, the source of that virus is basically the Shadow King. He started it, but then the monk, as the Shadow King that stayed to David at the beginning of the episode, became this carrier and started spreading the disease or the virus. You also get to see him walking out of the monastery as well, uninfected and unaffected, but nonetheless a carrier. But then there is that moment when you start remembering Jon Hamm's words. So for one thing, there was never a virus, there was never an infection, there was never a Shadow King infecting them first and then them infecting others. The only infection that the Shadow King's presence gave them was this fear, this stress, this insanity, and all of these psychological manifestations combined together transformed into a physical manifestation, the Chattering Teeth. But all of this just brings us to Jon Hamm's final statement at the very beginning of the episode in the opening sequence. If the idea of illness could become illness, what else about our reality is actually a disorder? Now you need to consider here that all of this is my explanation of what happened, which brings us to number 4. You're probably either typing a comment or thinking of typing a comment. You are wrong. How could you think that this is not a virus when he's basically spreading it all over the place to people that does not have the same stress or the same fears? I think it is basically all about the monk's abilities. He could implant thoughts, he could implant memories, he could give you the full experience that he did have in the monastery, and he could just implant it right in your head. So pretty much you're seeing his fears and his stress and the stress and fears of every single monk that lived in that place. And accordingly, you're getting infected, you're getting the same disorder. Besides that, this contagious person, once he's infected one of them, they could basically infect others. And you could go there by the very same examples that Jon Hamm gave us at the beginning of the episode, because the Tanganyika laughter epidemic, for example, that is real and was actually theorized that it is stress related. That happened in the 1960s in Tanganyika, which we now know as Tanzania. But moving on to number 5, I'm still not sure what the significance of that black insect is, the gooey black insect, but it did get going and walking into the ears of Ptolemy, so yeah, there has to be something related to that we're going to discover later on. Now you do need to remember as well that when David and Cary walked into Ptolemy's mind, Cary did step into some of that black goo. So pretty much that insect has a huge significance here. Now it might be related to the monk and that Chattering Teeth infection, this is how they got infected, or this is how he kind of sent out to infect others, but nonetheless we do not know for sure yet, so I'm not going to go much into that. But number 6, you do feel this compassion, this empathy, this sympathy with Lenny and for Lenny, watching her conversation with David, being trapped, feeling like a pet, begging David for help, asking him to talk to Farouk so she could get out of there. It does as well make you wonder what they have got cooked up for Lenny once they basically get Farouk back to his body, because she's not going to stay like this all the way, or I don't think she's going to stay like this all the way. So pretty much, and even though Lenny is not really Lenny, or did not start off as Lenny, I'm thinking they're going to find her a Lenny body to occupy once this is all said and done, once they get Farouk back to his body. But the conversation that followed between Farouk and David was extremely interesting. One part though was really important out of all of it, because number 7, Farouk tells David, no, it is important. Language, the meaning of things. So pretty much, and once again, this is one of those moments where you kind of start getting confused all over again. What kind of message is Farouk trying to send the audience? Is he telling us that everything that is being said might have 2 meanings, we're just going for the closest one? Or is he just talking to David? Is it just a random conversation he's having with David? But then there is also number 8. Interesting, don't you think? You're doing this for a woman you love who lives in a future you're going to destroy if you help me. The timeline. She lives in the future you're trying to change, and when you do, she will cease to exist. So really, you're helping her to commit suicide. Now first off, and since we're mentioning that woman he loves, I am really loving that entire thing with Sid as a cat. That is really good. Really loving it, really loving the conversations they're having, and it really cracked me up when David acted like a smart man and didn't tell her who is prettier, her younger self or her older self, or if her older self does look prettier. But nonetheless, the words of Farouk are extremely interesting, because I'm thinking right now, who's playing mind games on us? Is it Farouk or is it future Sid? We do realize that even if he restores Farouk back to his body, there is no harm in that, because he kills him a week from the moment that he restores him to his body, actually a week from the events of last week's episode. And that pretty much leads to that future with a one-armed Sid. There is no reason as well Farouk would be lying about this, because he does need David's help, and why then would he tell David that this would lead to a future in which Sid no longer exists? That just makes no sense, because that could lead David to not helping Farouk. Now you see, this makes absolute sense when you think about it this way, but then again, you know that Legion plays tricks on you, you know that everything is not what it seems, and you do know as well that moments before that, Farouk did mention that language, the meaning of words, the meaning of things, does mean a lot. It is all important. So what if all of this is all about Farouk playing more mind games with David? But number 9, I'm not going to emphasize all the mazes in Ptolemy's head and the maze in Melanie's head. But what I plan on talking about here is the good writing for Melanie, that total darkness in her mind. That is very representative of what she's been since the beginning of the season. She's in a very dark place, and her mind is a very dark place as well. But finally though, number 10. So while the monk did kill himself in order to make the journey towards finding the Shadow King's body even harder, he did give us a lot of information, or his presence in general did give us a lot of information on this episode. So when he mentions this weapon that he needs to fight the monster, to stop the monster, speaking of the Shadow King, Melanie is under the belief that David is that weapon. So that weapon is a sword, and this sword is a double-edged one, because David is the one looking to restore Farouk back to his own body. So when you kind of think about it, with all the talk about illnesses and about disorders and all of that good stuff since the beginning of the episode, they have rode themselves into a situation where David himself might be the illness and might be the cure, or could be either. The only problem here is, I do think that David is the illness in both cases. This double-edged sword is a killer in all cases, no matter how you look at it. But that is pretty much gonna be part of my theory talk on Friday on Legion. I'm gonna be posting a video then, right after my Gotham video, so do stay tuned for that, and until then, let me know in the comments what you thought of this episode. Do you think David is actually the villain of the season? A lot of you have actually gotten to that conclusion. Some of you have actually gotten to the conclusion that I got to, which is really beyond David becoming the villain, like expanding on that idea. But I'm going to talk about that scenario as well on that theory video, because it is basically the premise for that theory. Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like. Now while you're at it, and if you did like the content of this video, it would be also much appreciated if you did subscribe and enable notifications for my community posts, my live streams, and my future videos. Until I see you next time though, thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.